All righty, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode, take two of the day of the Red, White, Claret, and Blue show with your hosts, Alex and Triple C himself, Chris Cueball Condit, the American villain voices, and as always, the lukewarmiest of lukewarm opinions. We're going to dispense with the socials and following us everywhere. You know we've got a ticket giveaway coming up. You know to follow us. If you don't, hop on that and go check out our old interview with Paul Faulkner and Doug Wright, MBE of Birmingham. Chris, we tried it earlier, didn't work. We're trying it now. Seems to be going smooth so far. How are you doing? How was your weekend?
Fingers crossed, doing well. You know, the internet seems to be cooperating at the moment. Weekend was good, very wet, but we did have the Vaqueros in Pittsburgh, which was a nice change of pace. So Alex and his lovely wife Katie met my wife and children, which somehow had not happened until this point. You know, Alex and I decided to travel internationally together before we introduced our wives to each other. But you know, that's just the way this and do like 100 episodes of a podcast. But that's just the way this thing rolls. So that was great, and now we're settling down and looking back on a disappointing Ipswich draw, but otherwise a great weekend. How was yours?
Yeah, it was excellent. If I said it was awful, that would kind of be insulting to you and your family. But
I mean, maybe a little, you know.
no, we had a great time driving out to Pittsburgh. Great brewery, some cold, rainy weather. Still worth it to get out, get cozy in that wood paneled Havoc Brewing Company. For those who don't know, who might listen to this and think that Chris and I are best friends that see each other all the time. I mean, we talk almost daily, but we basically hang out in person once a quarter at best. So yesterday was our quarterly hangout. Our families finally met, and I have to say, I said it earlier, Chris, I'll tell you again, you are officially my fourth favorite Condit that I have met so far. So once I meet your dogs, they will obviously take the top two positions because I think in all cases, dogs are better than humans. But yeah, and honestly, I don't even think that's a knock on you per se. I
No.
think that you just have a lovely wife, excellent children. I mean, your daughter gave me a lovely hug while I was waiting to order a beer. She's so sweet. So yeah, it was a great weekend, and then today just enjoyed the sunny, windy weather before we get some snow on Wednesday.
Yeah, I hope not. But yes, that is how she gets you. She hugs you because otherwise you would never want to be around her, because she starts yelling at you after 5-10 minutes. But yeah, she gets you with the hugs. And don't forget, there are three brothers and my parents as well that you could meet that could knock me further down the chain. So if that time comes, there are plenty of pegs for me to go further down.
Yeah, I don't really have that issue. I'm pretty awesome. So I'll meet everybody in my family. I'll still be your favorite. I stand by
Well,
that.
Katie's my favorite, in fairness.
All right, fine, fair enough. I'll be second favorite. But from what was a lovely afternoon, I think we unfortunately can't spend too much time discussing it because we need to chat about what was a very disappointing morning yesterday. So let's get rid of our smiles. As always, we are the lukewarmiest of lukewarm podcasts. We might have been happy. Let's make ourselves sad, because that is exactly what you want to hear from your favorite podcast. Let's all get sad together. And let us talk about Ipswich. So from a tactical setup perspective, Ollie Watkins got the start. Tyrone Mings was on the bench, not for long. Axel Disasi started as we anticipated. Daniel Malin on the right due to a slight injury to Leon Bailey. We expect him back on Wednesday, according to Unai. And Amadou Onana still not in the squad. Certainly seems to be some increasingly trustworthy rumors that maybe he won't necessarily play through a knock or something that other players will. What did you think when you saw all of this come out yesterday, Chris?
So the surprise was Watkins being healthy and fit to start. I think that we maybe expected to see him on the bench, but he was ready to go. I, like you, was disappointed that Onana couldn't make the start because I still think he's a a very good player and an important player going forward for this club. So, the rumors have been there that yes, if he's not 100%, he doesn't go, and that right now seems to be ringing true because he's been out a while and no one's quite sure exactly what's wrong with him and what the injury is. But boy, we would like to have him back, if for nothing else, more other than more flexibility through the midfield, because with the additions that we have, we really, if we had a fully healthy midfielder close to it, you have any number of options you can go to, both tactically and in terms of personnel that you can deploy. So I would love to see him out there, just for the flexibility it provides.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we're at with lineups right now. I think for the next few weeks, we're probably not reading into them too much from uh who is Unai favoring, who's ready to go perspective. It's really just they're interesting from a who's healthy. We've got enough games coming up, playing more than once every 3 days, essentially on average. So everybody's going to rotate, everybody's going to get through. And exactly to your point with Onana, it's even more so than something really desiring his talent or what he brings to the team. Frankly, we just need the energy and the bodies and the legs, if nothing else. So hopefully the added time off as he's kind of come in and out of the match day 18, hopefully we get him back sooner rather than later. I think that's all we can say. But with that, let's move on to the players that actually were there and participated in the match. So first segment, I think, is really those first 15 minutes until the Enciso Kamara double substitution, double injury. And Villa started this game really brightly. It was similar to what you and I predicted in the match preview. Ipswich started out pressing kind of high. I think trying to take advantage, cause a mistake in the back line, and you certainly saw that from Boubacar Kamara. Almost gave up an own goal, had multiple misplaced passes. One goes out to the left. But when Villa was able to play through that press, they tried to do so very quickly and find those balls in behind that we were looking for, really taking advantage of Ipswich's weakness to the through ball. And you had a couple really nice ones from John McGinn. Another opportunity where Ali was able to hold up a pass from Kamara to Rogers. Unfortunately, no one was able to find Daniel Malin in acres of space. And then, unfortunately, you get the two injuries that break it up. I think it kind of validated maybe why Kamara or gave an explanation to why Kamara wasn't playing so well. What do you think when you ultimately saw him talking to Unai on the side and then kind of walking off?
Yeah, I mean, I think that he was probably carrying something coming in, and that was he just didn't look right from the beginning. And I know he's playing out of position, but he's played out of position now in that's 3 consecutive games, and he didn't look as poor as he did yesterday against Ipswich in the previous couple of games. I mean, he had his moments where he struggled, but it was from minute one, and the bigger thing was the lack of movement. It's not like we saw him sprinting, running, and making a ton of moves that caused some sort of injury. So I think he was probably nursing something and eventually made the decision that he couldn't go. And I think on the other side, there's an obvious reticence to go to Mings because of his injury history now and because of what he's dealing with. But again, at this point, we just don't have bodies. And so you've got no one else to turn to. And Mings, for his part, played very well and looked confident and fit.
Yeah, thankfully he made it through the 90 at least. We have two starting center backs again, if nothing else.
Just
But
two.
yeah, literally just two. Now, the way that he came off, the fact that it was a conversation, the fact that I do believe he just sat down on the side. He didn't necessarily go down the tunnel for scans. I'm hoping it's not a major injury, let's say a 1 to 2 week thing, as opposed to a more serious strain or possible tear. But him and Mings, we kind of said this at the start of the season. When you come back from injuries like that, it's it's something that cascades with all your muscular imbalance and all those kinds of things. And so you're probably seeing that with the two of them now. They came in, we had to rely on them for a lot of heavy minutes. Probably the legs weren't necessarily up to it. And so I think that's kind of what you're seeing now with the run of fixtures that we've been on. Other interesting stat, Chris, we've now had to make a first half sub in all 5 of our previous 5 matches. I guess you could nitpick a little bit with Ollie Watkins since the sub wasn't made until halftime, but he did have to come off with his injury. So listen, everybody has injuries at this point in the season. We've talked about Spurs. You look at United losing Amad Diallo now for the rest of the season. So it's not like Villa, I think, are particularly hard done by compared to the teams that are in and around us in the middle of the table. But we'll talk later about Liverpool. You know, you do see the difference when you have a team who's been able to have most of their players available all season long, and one like us who's been, what are we on to, our like 10th, 12th different center back pairing combination this year? That impacts a team. And, you know, we have criticized Unai Emery's defensive system or maybe his attention to the defensive side of the ball, but you're cycling through that many center back pairings, that many central midfields, defensive midfield pairings. That is also going to impact the defensive structure, solidity, and ability to, you know, build some sort of consistency in how we keep teams out.
It is. There's no question. But that I actually don't think that was the biggest issue on Saturday, though. You know, I think that, yeah, we surrendered the goal early in the second half, pardon me. But I think the larger issue is still finishing on the attacking side, because we created plenty of chances, and we can get into the specifics of them. But there were lots of opportunities there for Villa to score, and some of those have got to start going in, or at least hitting the woodwork. And look, there were some great saves made, particularly late, and that. But some of these now, you've got to start getting concerned about players' ability to finish.
So let's talk about those players, Chris. We're, 15 minute to 39 when we get the red card. Before we get to the red card, like we said, Villa started out brightly. Ipswich definitely started to grow into the game and become more defensively solid at the back. And this is kind of why, to your point, you have to take advantage of the opportunities that you get. Now, I thought Ipswich's defensive strategy was interesting and effective. Villa obviously like to attack a lot through our outside backs, particularly Luka Dean, but now to a certain extent Garcia as well on the right-hand side. And what we'll do if that's not on, if we can't create the 1-2s and the overloads over there to play through somebody, we wind up cycling it around the back to the other side as quickly as possible. And so what Ipswich would do was they would press that outside back very, very quickly. They were right on him. But simultaneously, you had Liam Delap running to the near side center back. So if Luka Dean has the ball, he's running to mark Tyrone Mings. And that slows the whole thing down. That inhibited our ability to cycle the ball around to the other side and find other points of attack. And I thought that was a really, really smart way to disrupt what Villa was trying to do in getting those quick balls ultimately into the midfield and then through to one of our runners. Ref certainly didn't help with some soft fouls, but by the 30th minute, despite Villa being on top from a possession perspective, both us and Ipswich only had 5 touches in each other's opposition box, same amount. And so I think that is a testament to how Ipswich was ultimately able to create that shell around the 18 and stifle Villa from doing what they wanted to do to create new opportunities.
Yeah, I think that you have to credit Ipswich for their defensive organization. The balls were getting through, like we talked about, particularly early, but they were able to rally pretty quickly and bring bodies back so that they were able to organize defensively, so that there were a couple of opportunities that probably should have been better or scored. But by and large, you were seeing a lot more balls blocked in the box or blocked coming into the box because they had bodies back to defend quickly. So you have to credit their organization and game plan for that, because that was obviously a point of focus. I think that the more frustrating part for Aston Villa was that once again we saw early opportunities that didn't come to fruition, and that came back to bite in the end, like we've seen so many times this season. So we've talked about it a million times, just how important it is to get an early lead and really put your foot on your opponent. And so far, Villa haven't really been able to do that, even in situations where you'd expect them to.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the 24th minute. Yeah. Malin has some great play on the right-hand side. Ultimately slips in Ali, who gets a really nice cutback on the ground, back kind of towards the penalty spot, top of the box. Malin whiffs on it, ultimately goes out to Luka Dean, who blazes over. One of those two guys needs to make contact. That's great work by Ollie Watkins. Now the good and the bad, you get Ollie Watkins in the 33rd minute. Disasi, great ball over the top. Ollie beats his man. He's one-on-one with the keeper. You gotta get that on frame. You gotta slip it by him. Everybody talks about the big debate is Ali a clinical finisher? And for the detractors, this is yet another in this season of case in point.
Yeah. I mean, you at least have to put it on frame. You can't miss. And that's what happened there. And I think Watkins knew it too, because he went down and kind of grabbed his head, and fell on the ground. And it's just like, we've talked about this too. Great teams finish that. You see better teams, not better is not the word I'm looking for. You see great teams finish that ball off and finish their relegation opponent off. And if that's the level that Villa want to reach, then that's the gap. And it's not solely on Ollie Watkins. I don't want to say that, but he is going to be the focal point because of his position and because of the number of big chances missed that he has.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in cold water, so I'll save my thoughts for that. And let's just jump ahead to the 39th minute when we found out that Axel Tuanzebe is apparently still a Villa fan, because I can't think of any other explanation for having essentially two NFL horse collar tackles in such quick succession. I mean, that again, that would be like 30 yards and ejection from an NFL football game, let alone English football.
Yeah, two obvious yellows that you give the second, and there wasn't a whole lot of protestation from Tuanzebe, but there was some from Ipswich in general, and the referee just kind of like shrugged his shoulders as if to say, "What do you want me to do? I can't let that go." As JJ's coming into an attacking position, and Tuanzebe just grabs him by the shoulder and pulls him down. So I was extremely disappointed that Villa didn't take any advantage of that, because now you've got an opponent in relegation scrap, right? So like they're a fun story. Ed Sheeran, they play attacking football in the championship. They scored a ton of goals, all that fun stuff. Yes, great. They're not good. They're not a good Premier League team. You've got them down to 10 men at home. That's 3 points, and it has to be. So I'm very disappointed at the fact that down to 10 men, they were able to play this thing to a draw. And all credit to Ipswich for it. But if you feel any other way than this, I'd love to hear why. Like if you think like, oh, that wasn't that bad, I'd love to hear why.
I mean, think about all the times that Villa were down in and around that area, both prior to relegation and afterwards. And when we would get a red card, you knew that it was 3-0, 4-1, 5-1. Like it was coming.
Yeah.
And teams knew how to exploit us in that way. So like credit to Ipswich for having the mentality. And it almost makes me look back on those Villa teams like why couldn't you muster up the courage to get something out of this? But at the same time, I think what happens to Villa is more the norm. When a team down there goes down to 10, no matter how much they try to defend for their lives, teams at the top of the table punish them, and Villa just didn't. And, I'm really looking at those last 10 minutes of that half. So it happened in the 39th. You've got 6, and then I think there were 4 minutes of extra time in the first half. So Villa basically had 10 minutes where they were on top, where Ipswich didn't sub, was playing someone out of position on that right-hand side. And we got one opportunity, maybe, where one was deflected over by the keeper, by Morgan Rogers in the 43rd minute. Other than that, honestly, I was actually really disappointed with how Villa set up to attack this. They're down to 10 men. They're stretched. And for most of those 10 minutes, if you go back and look, Daniel Malen is basically on Ollie Watkins' right shoulder and doesn't leave it. You're the right winger. You need to be out wide. We need to be stretching them out, moving them around the pitch as quickly as possible. It was too slow and too narrow, and we made it way too easy for them to defend. They didn't need the extra man to block
Right.
us off.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're exactly right. So there's nothing really I can add other than it was strange because you have to wonder, is someone not following the plan there, whether it was Malen, which seems most likely given how close he was to the center. Like, you wonder if Bailey were out there, is he not continuing to try and stretch the field wide? And would that not have been better? I mean, obviously he wasn't healthy, but it was strange to see it sort of keyhole toward the center at a point where you would want it to open up and really stretch, which is, again, a hallmark of like this Aston Villa side and this Unai Emery led attack. So it was strange to see it go the other way.
Yeah. So halftime now, second game in a row against a relegation side that Unai Emery needs to make multiple halftime substitutions. Also not good for a team that supposedly wants to be competing for Champions League again. Maatsen comes on for Dean, Rashford on for Ramsey. Clearly Unai Emery is going for this one at 0-0. Jacob Ramsey, I kind of want to talk about a little bit, continuing an up and down season for him. He looked very good against Spurs in his dribbling and positioning, obviously finishing not so much. And then you come out today hoping that he's going to build on that. And other than a couple drives when they went down to 10 men, I mean, he was largely anonymous. I don't really remember him getting on the ball all that much. I'm disappointed that he wasn't able to build on the recent performances at all.
Yeah, and he did get the second yellow on Tuanzebe. That was him too. But yes, I agree. And I mean, now you wonder, because that's Rashford for a full 45, right? And he played well and he created out there. Do we see him as a starter, and does that push JJ to the bench? Or is Rashford right now more effective as a sub? But I don't know. At this point, you need to create as many chances as you can. And at least yesterday, it was Rashford creating the bulk of the chances once he came on.
Yeah. So interesting that it was him as opposed to Marco Asensio in my mind. Rashford, I think, is someone with the pace who is going to get in behind, uses running, like all that kind of stuff. And obviously you expect Ipswich down to 10 men to kind of sit in a little bit. That being said, I was very wrong. I thought Rashford's dribbling ability, his ability to take some quick snapshots that might have been less anticipated by the defense and goalie. You think about that one pretty early on where he tried the curler from his side. He brought something different to the team, maybe a little bit of a version of what Jacob Ramsey does. So I think you're right. If we are to believe all the rumors coming out of the Villa camp that he is super fit and, in for extra training and all that kind of stuff, whether he's trying to get to Barcelona or not, given the news today, maybe it is worth giving him some more time, not necessarily like he needs to get up to the pace of things, just getting to know his teammates a little bit more. So yeah, interesting there. And I think you're right that he had a fairly decent half. Didn't really matter though, because on 55 minutes, Ipswich takes the lead on really poor defending from, I think, 4 specific players in there. Ian Maatson cannot let in that cross. The fact that he was beat to the byline that way, too easy. Tyrone Mings, too far infield, close to the post, just flails at it. You really need to step out, see where the ball is going and where the opposition players are, and protect that near post. Should never get by him. Disasi, too slow to react to the run of Liam Delap. And same thing for McGinn, who just kind of comes flying in and collides with Disasi, preventing any opportunity from him from getting in front of the shot either. So just a comical failure from multiple senior pros that you expect better from.
And I mean, just really frustrating again, because this is like, you want to talk about feeling pressure now. Now you're down to 10, or they're down to 10 men, and they've taken the lead on you at home. I can't stress enough that this was at Villa Park, against a relegation side. So that the players are feeling that pressure now, that they have to get something out of this game, which they weren't anyway. But now you're just clawing back to try and get 1 point, and that's not a place you want to be at any point against a relegation side. So again, I hate to keep harping on that, but it's very frustrating to me how this ended up where we are, and it was a bad goal to concede. I have nothing to add tactically to what you said. I agree. I think just more from a mindset standpoint, and just an overall feeling in the side right now, like it's tough for me to get to really find positives here, because this was such a disappointing result for me.
I completely agree. The reaction honestly also disappointed me. If we're just going to continue, it continued to be too slow. I don't understand, when you're down to 10 men, how anyone gets the ball, just puts their foot on it, and basically stops any momentum. And it mostly was Morgan Rogers playing that role yesterday. It seemed like every time the ball got to him, foot went on top of it, pirouetted around on top of it, looked at the defense. They wound up getting reset, and inevitably he got the ball taken off his feet multiple times, leading to Ipswich counters the other way. So 62nd minute, Marco Asensio comes on for Daniel Mallon. He goes to the middle. We had 85% possession in the second half, which further infuriates that they basically had one foray forward and scored off of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we continued to be incredibly narrow and incredibly rusty. Garcia, get effing wide. The amount of times that he got the ball when it cycled around, and then he has to dribble like outwards at a diagonal to get to the byline to stretch them, basically killing the momentum, and either needed to cut it back. We didn't mention in the first half how many times he airmailed crosses. So did Luka Dean. Just absolutely no end product on either one of them. Really disappointed in his performance yesterday. And then Asensio, seeing the rust of 2-3 months without playing, he should have scored probably 2 or 3 times. Honestly, the amount of opportunities that he got in the box within 12 yards that he frankly didn't even put on frame was
Right.
Was really disappointing for a player of his pedigree and his quality.
Yeah, so that's one that you hope will come as he plays more. It stinks, because you don't want to be in that position as a team, but you hope that those will start at least being put on frame. In terms of Garcia, he's still only like 3 weeks in, so he's still
3
relatively new
weeks
to
in,
the
coming
side.
out of the Spanish second tier. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
but so like I agree though. I think that he would have been one that would have been brought along much more slowly, but for the injuries. So Matty Cash, a nation turns its lonely eyes to you, and we need you to come back in the side, which is funny. Like, I love Matty Cash more than most, but I think right now everybody is kind of sitting there going like, you know what? Matty Cash crosses are looking pretty good right now, and if nothing else, Cash is very good at staying very wide and whipping the ball in from a wide position. But I think, like, if we're going to talk about the second half on a whole, from like the when did we score? Like 68 minutes, something like that, 69 minutes.
68
Yeah.
exactly. Hell of a free kick by Marcus Rashford, by the way.
Yeah. So like that, from that point on, we saw a little bit more life from Villa, and there were a lot of opportunities, and again, a couple of really, really good saves. I'm sure we're gonna talk about the one in added time. But yes, Marcus Rashford with that ridiculous free kick that was very near to going in, and you couldn't really put that much better. Ollie Watkins does a nice job, in my opinion, to be there on the recovery, because that ball came pretty hard off of the woodwork. So it was a nice finish all around. But that starts and ends with Rashford, just with a, unsurprisingly, because of the pedigree of player he is, but a world-class free kick. And I think that that's something that kind of excites you going forward. You see that that player is still there in terms of his ability to create on set pieces.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know if Ollie gets enough credit for how good that finish is, with how fast that comes off the bar and how close he is to it. To just keep it straight and not shank it, with whatever, to be alert enough to chase that in. Very, very great finish on his part. Absolutely. So all the credit in the world to him for that. And you're right. Palmer stood on his head. The third goalkeeper that Ipswich has gone with this year, by the way, as have the other two relegation teams. But that save in the 92nd minute, unbelievable dribble by Marcus Rashford, great cutback. Rogers is there. I've
Thought it was a
seen
goal.
5, 6 times. I have no idea how he got his hand to that, and then to flick it like back over his head so that it goes out. You see a lot of keepers probably just try and push that forward, but to have the presence of mind of getting it out for another corner, uh, tip your hat to him, man. They certainly maintained the 1-1 draw because of him. Not an
Yeah.
excuse for Villa. There were enough opportunities where they didn't even make him try, but yeah, I hope he didn't need to buy a drink out in Ipswich on Saturday evening.
Thought it was a goal. Legitimately, the 92nd minute, thought that was
Mhm.
in. Thought that was going to be the winner, and unfortunately, didn't happen.
Yep. Anything else on the game, or good points, bad points?
Let's go good points, bad points, and why don't you start with the good ones, because I'm not too thrilled.
I only have one, and that
Okay.
is that Rashford and Asensio were lively and getting into good positions, ultimately creating some stuff. To your point, as Asensio shakes off the rust and he hopefully converts a few of those. Same thing with Marcus Rashford. Obviously, he looked better today than he even did in the last game. Um, the only thing that was negative about both of their performances is that I never want Marcus Rashford to take another corner again. The amount of times he either skied it too far, hit the first man, or even when we tried to do that short corner that we play all the time to like the corner of the 18, he like blew it right by Ian Matson. So I don't know why he can strike beautiful free kicks from the center of the pitch, but not from the corner.
Right.
But I want someone else taking those. Outside of them two, honestly, I don't really have anything else other than Mings survived the
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
75 minutes that he played.
No further injuries. Yeah.
No.
I agree. So, like, I thought Rashford was very bright in the 45 minutes he played. I don't have a whole lot else positive. The great finish from Ollie, we already mentioned, but he also missed a couple. So, I think Rashford was the big bright spot for me. And if you want to talk about bad points, we can talk generally. It's just that we've now, well, like, we have 2 points off of Ipswich this season. And if you are a team that wants to compete for Europe, and I'm not even talking about Champions League, I'm talking about any European competition, you can't be taking 2 points off of relegation teams like that. Those are 6 pointers, or you don't get to Europe. So that's where I'm getting frustrated, and you can probably hear it, because like what I see is a shrinking pool of points from which to pull from. And right now, the teams we need to beat to get to Europe are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So every point you leave on the table is a problem for me.
2 against Ipswich, only 3 against Wolves, draw against West Ham right above them. You're right. It's not good enough against the teams that you really need to be picking up your points against. So yeah, there's really no other way to frame it than that. The other thing I'll add is while yes, we are undefeated in 12 at home, it's actually only 6 wins and 6 draws.
Yeah.
That's a lot of dropped points at home, which is supposed to be Fortress Villa Park. I don't know that we feel that confident in that moniker against anyone, at least that we're going to get all 3. And we continue to miss an amazing amount of big chances. One of the largest leaders in the league in the amount of big chances that we cannot convert. Ali leading the league by 3 over Erling Haaland. And so, the larger implication on the season, this is kind of our season in a nutshell. Like, I just don't, you and I have said this for weeks, but you continue to see every week posts online about like making up ground on the top 4, top 5. We're 5 points off, we're 6 points off, we're 3 points off. It's so condensed, whatever. You're not going to make the Champions League, like you said, with these kinds of results against the teams down the table. And we're about to go through a hectic run of fixtures that probably defines our season, right? You've got games against Liverpool and Chelsea in there. You've got what should be hopefully 3 points against Crystal Palace. You've got our Champions League fixture in there. You've got our next FA Cup one. Like, by March, if things go poorly over the course of 2 weeks, we're kind of just kicking out our season into mid-table mediocrity.
Yeah.
Now, we don't know that it's going to go poorly, but kind of the point is that, like, in 2 weeks, we could know that the season is kind of done, or we could know that we have this really awesome springboard to really fight for over the course of the last 2.5 months of the season.
Yeah, I think that's the disappointment for me. Just that, like, we could have picked up these points and did not. And I'll only add to what you said in terms of like drop points. Just as an example, Everton have picked up 13 from 15. Everton, 13 from 15. That's the kind of run we need to be on if we want to be competing for Champions League especially, but even 5, 6, like you've got to pick up points. And right now it's just not good enough. And I'm again particularly disappointed just because Ipswich at home is 3 points. If you're a club that wants to be where Aston Villa wants to be.
I mean, you just look at the Ipswich results and Wolves, and so you add 7 more points to the table, right? For each, and 3, Villa are at 45. They're in 4th place.
Yeah.
Beat the teams you're supposed to, and you finish in the champion. Like that is what we're saying. It is so easy. You beat the bad teams, you qualify for the Champions League, and Villa are not doing that. So with that, we've got a couple cold waters, some hot takes from the internet where we will decide to whether or not we're pouring some cold water on them. So the first one, it's really a tandem, and we mentioned this earlier. It's both sides of the Ollie Watkins debate, and you only really see these 2 takes online, nothing in the middle. One side is Ollie is just not clinical enough as a finisher for where Villa want to be, and people need to realize that and realize that we need to move on from him. Or Ollie is amazing. There can be no fault of his, and all the big chances he's missed mean the floodgates are about to open at some inexplicable point, and like he's, the greatest striker in the Prem.
So I am definitely somewhere in the middle of those 2.
Shocker.
I guess I pour cold water on both sides of that, and here's why. There's no denying that Watkins misses big chances. Like you said, he's got the most missed big chances in the league, and he doesn't finish big chances as well as you would expect or you would like, I guess. And we've talked about it before several times. It almost seems like the goals he's supposed to finish are the ones he struggles with the most. So, like when he gets a ball and he's running free and clear toward goal, is when he seems to struggle the most. If he just actually, it's a perfect encapsulation now that I think about it. This game, his miss in the first half and his reaction to the Rashford free kick, like that's just his natural ability and quick reflexes to be able to react that fast. And he's not thinking about it. He's just putting the ball in the net. But on the other, he's got the ball at his feet with nobody but the keeper in front of him, and he shanks it. I don't know if shank is fair, but he misses it wide right. So like that is to me Ollie Watkins as a striker in a nutshell. Doesn't finish the easy one, but makes a heck of a play to finish a difficult shot on a reaction that would have been easy to squirt one way or the other, or even to sky it, anything like that. Just anything could have happened off of that ball coming that hard off the woodwork. So that is accurate, right? That missing big chances, accurate. But there's also the other side where everybody says you can't fault him for anything, and I think you can. It's fair. But you can also appreciate that he is a very good striker, and there's a reason that you and I were saying throughout this whole John Duran saga that we would like to keep both because it's good to have two good strikers. Like that's a good thing to have. So I'm not saying he's the greatest English striker since Harry Kane, although I'm hard pressed to think of a better right now English striker. But he's a very good striker in the Premier League, and there's no denying that either. So, yes, he misses too many big chances, but he also scores in bunches when he gets going. The difficulty is, like you said, that isn't quantifiable as much in terms of you don't know when he's going to get on a streak and score, 7 in 9 games or something like that. So it's sort of frustrating as a fan, but also I can appreciate both sides of this argument.
Yeah, I'm somewhere in the middle as well. I don't think the floodgates are opening this season. We're 2/3 of the way through. There's 13 matches left. It's literally a third remaining. We have a preponderance of evidence that says that this is not Ollie Watkins' year for whatever reason. Playing over the summer, lingering issues with John Duran, now new talent. I don't think that we're seeing a 7 and 9 this season. Every time he's come close to it, it hasn't happened. And so on the evidence, I don't think it's happening. The best that we can hope for is that it winds up coming more out of the midfield, out of a Marco Asensio, Marcus Rashford, because I see why their finishing could change. They're rusty. They haven't played in a while. Like you said, when he gets more minutes, he can score. Ollie Watkins has had plenty of minutes and plenty of opportunity. Like nothing's changing there. So the floodgates are not opening. He is not above reproach. What I will say is, as has always been the case, he's in the team not always for his finishing, but for what he does off the ball, holding the ball up, pressing, usually his passing ability, although that hasn't been as good this year. So you take the good with the bad. Now, you sent me a tweet earlier that I'm just going to quickly read that I also kind of think some cold water needs to be poured on. And it was someone saying that Haaland, the league's best striker, has only missed 2 fewer. They said less, but fewer. English is important. 2 fewer big chances than Ollie. And actually, I think it's 3. And they say, fact is, if you're a good striker, you get yourself into good positions and create more openings for yourself, therefore more chances to score, but also more chances to miss. Yes, but at the same time, Haaland has 19 goals in the Prem this season in 25 appearances. In the same 25 appearances, Ollie has 11. Ali has scored 70 goals in 171 Premier League appearances. Erling Haaland has 82 goals in 91. So there still is clearly a much higher, much more trustworthy finishing rate with Erling Haaland than Ollie Watkins. Let's not pretend that they're in the same conversation. And as long as you accept what Ollie Watkins is, which is a good leading striker for roughly the sixth best team in England, then yeah, he's right on target. And I think that that's sort of a fair thing to say, that Villa has been roughly the sixth to ninth best team in England over the course of 2 years. At least when we think about like the average points, the goals conceded, like all these things that we've kind of talked about before. So you pour cold water on both of those.
Yep, 100%.
And then the other one, which I kind of spoiled with the larger implication on the season, Villa fans who think that Champions League is on the cards for us this year need to wake up.
Oh, I don't pour cold water on that. I think if you look at points available and points required, it's tough. Like it's going to take a monumental run to get to fourth place. Like I said at the beginning of the year, and I've said it on just about every pod that we've recorded this season, finishing in Europe is a success for me. And I would love to get back to Champions League. I don't think it's likely. Just looking at the schedule and looking at the way that the team have played. So I'd much rather focus on what is achievable. And I'm sure the message is going to be something like, play the game in front of you and don't worry about the table and all that sort of fun stuff. But players have to think about that. There's no way it doesn't enter their mind. But I think that, like, if you think that it's realistic that this team achieves Champions League this year, then we are watching different teams, and I'm not sure that I'm ever going to be able to square that.
Yeah, again, we have played 2/3 of the season. We have seen the points that Villa has dropped. We've seen not just the points that Villa has gained, but the manner in which they've gained those points. And this is where you come back to what I've said repeatedly is, like, looking at the performances, where do you see something that feels consistent as a way to continue to pick up points? And I don't see it. And so, John Townley tweeted this earlier today. With 13 games left to play, so 39 points, he took the average of the last 10 Premier League seasons and how many points you need to finish to get there. Now, remember, last year, Villa finished fourth on 68 points, I believe. Normally, 68 points is a fifth place finish, which means that Villa would need to get 30 of 39, 10 wins out of 13. To get sixth, 63 points. That's 25. Seventh, 59, eighth, 55, 17 points. So, like, 7 wins in 13. Could Villa do that? Probably. Seventh place finish. The league is tracking a little under that this year. I mean, Man City is in fourth right now. They're kind of on pace for like 66. So, sure, if Villa nearly win out through the rest of the season, could they theoretically catch City for fourth, or maybe sneak into that fifth place, and England winds up getting it as part of the coefficient? But to your point, I think it's highly unlikely. Let's focus on the FA Cup. Let's focus on enjoying Champions League while we're in it, and hopefully we can sneak into, let's say, seventh or sixth and kind of make it from there. But I don't pour cold water on this. I think that criticizing the team for not being on a Champions League pace is just unfair to what this team is.
Well, we've said that for a long time too, that last year was they performed above pardon me, above what we would expect and above what the metrics would show. That they were probably closer to eighth, than fourth in terms of the advanced metrics. So this may just be a regression to who this team actually is, not helped by injury by any stretch. But this may just be who they are, and we're still in the process of building here to a consistent European competitor, right? That's where we want to be. consistently in Europe, then consistently in Champions League, then consistently playing for silverware, right? I think that's the model that Villa have in their mind here.
I think that's precisely right. So with that, let's turn our attention to Wednesday in Liverpool, and actually in a little bit of a deviation for how we usually do this, let's actually begin with a demanding of an apology. Or are we actually demanding an apology, Chris? And I kind of have a little bit of a surprise for you here, but EPL and the scheduling of fixtures, I will allow you to talk first.
Well, so now I'm thrown off because I want to know what the surprise is. But yes, I'm demanding an apology. If you don't, I'm demanding one. Like, this is ridiculous. And Villa and Unai Emery and Monchi and everyone has come out with the strongest language you can say without getting fined that they are upset about this. This game getting moved up in like a couple of weeks' notice. When there's no reason to have it at this point in the season, they could have pushed it later. It just doesn't feel right. Now, it affects Liverpool the same way it affects us. It's no different. But they have a deeper squad, and they have less injuries. So in that way, they are less affected. But I don't understand this. I don't understand why Villa's appeal was not reviewed and accepted. But maybe you have information that I don't, because I'm much more reactionary on these sort of things than you are, and I'm always ready to fight a straw man. So tell me why I'm wrong, Alex, if that's what you're going to do with the surprise.
So the question is where? A lot of Villa fans have just said March. We both only have, I think, one game in March or something, or maybe we have two, whatever. And at first glance, that seems right. Go to March. Problem is, due to the international window, the Champions League, and our own quarterfinal fixture, there are no open dates. We're still playing Sunday, Tuesday every week through March, and then the calendar needs to shut down. So unless we dropped out of the FA Cup, there's not actually an open window. So then the question becomes, well, where do you move it? Do you go to April? Do you go to May? The Premier League doesn't do that. The match needs to be moved up to the earliest available opportunity so that you don't wind up with teams with large match imbalances as we get towards the end of the season, outside of ones that are absolutely necessary. So I would be curious to see where Villa proposed moving the match, because just looking at the calendar, I don't actually see where there's an opening to do it. And that is why I'm not yet demanding an apology from the Premier League until I hear or read the contingency for what Villa was asking for, and then why the Premier League rejected it. Because otherwise, just looking at March, it seems like a pretty quick rejection out of hand, or I'm not really sure like what the appeal was for.
Can you just be angry and not rational? Just get mad.
Listen, man, we wouldn't be the Lukewarm Podcast if you and I were both raging all the time. We have to stay true to form. So
that's fair.
Everybody, like, if you found the opening, please like message us, slide tackle into our DMs. Since everybody who listens to this is a friend, text me personally. Because maybe I missed a weekend or a random Tuesday somewhere, but I think the international break is what a lot of people look and see. Oh yeah, that's where it should be in March, and obviously we can't actually put anything there. So
right,
yeah. So anyway, let us move on to our match preview and hop ahead to Liverpool Wednesday afternoon. And Chris, the last game, 2-0 to Liverpool in November, the refereeing was atrocious. You might actually remember from our recap, we didn't really recap the match. We just went cold water by cold water by cold water because there were so many questionable decisions and issues in that match. We were let down once again by Ollie's finishing, Jacob Ramsey, Morgan Rogers. And this was also back in that sequence of getting countered off of every single corner that we had.
Yep.
Nunez slid one over at one point, but they ultimately wound up finishing another one later. We were raging about that. And so when we look ahead to what's happening now, as you stated, no real injuries for Liverpool. Cody Gakpo has had a knock, wasn't involved against Wolves, but he may be back, maybe not. Otherwise, they're a very, very healthy team. And while they haven't looked good in their last three against Plymouth, Everton, and Wolves, despite winning against Wolves, excusable given the run they've had over the season. And as you texted me when you looked at it earlier today, damn, Liverpool is pretty good.
Yeah, they're really good. Yeah. So I do wonder if Emery can take anything from the last three games that Liverpool have played, because there's clearly something there where they've struggled. I also want to harken back to the reverse fixture for a minute, just to say, like, there were sections of that game where Villa played better than Liverpool, but without finishing. Again, like you talked about, it ended up looking 2-0, and it wasn't as far away as that looks now on paper. That game was closer, felt closer while you were watching it than that 2-0 final score. But ultimately, Liverpool did get the result, so we can't take anything away from that. What I'm more interested in right now, like I said, is how do you tactically set up? Because clearly, right now, Liverpool aren't just struggling to score; they're struggling to create. So, what is it that these teams have done? I mean, the Plymouth game, to an extent, you can kind of throw out, because it was a lot of younger players for most of the game. They did throw on pretty much everybody at the end to try and get something out of the game. But their goal creation, expected XG is just not there in the last several games. So what is it that Villa can do to impact that and to continue that? And I don't watch enough of Liverpool's games to know exactly what has happened. I would assume there's a lot of sitting back and absorbing pressure and then countering, because it's sort of counter to what Arne Slot wants to do. And I'm intrigued to see if that's how we see Villa set up. Again, I'll call back to the Tottenham game from last week, where we kind of saw not the high line that you typically see, or at least the higher setup, offside trap sort of thing, and a little bit more condensed, a little bit more ready to soak up pressure and counter Liverpool, use the speed of the team we have and some of the new players to create opportunities and hopefully get away with one here.
Yeah, we've talked in the past about Villa doing sort of like a soak up pressure press, where we let them kind of come into our half, and it's only when they cross the half line do we jump on them. We talked about this particularly with both matches against Arsenal, and I think that's probably our best bet. The question is, do you really see Unai Emery setting up his team to sit back and absorb pressure the way that we would expect Plymouth, a David Moyes, Wolves to do?
No. No.
Fair enough. Okay. Well then I guess I'll ask you. So I want to talk about how lethal Liverpool's attack is for a moment. So you did a little research earlier into the expected goals that they've created. We obviously saw some what you thought was dubious, I thought was a fair penalty shout for Luis Diaz in the Liverpool game earlier today. And so you were expecting kind of them to have that benefit of the referees, whatever. But what did you kind of find?
So yeah, they are underperforming XG by a fairly significant margin in the Premier League in particular. If we're looking specifically at that, their XG is nearly -5 in terms of a differential from their expected goals to their actual goals when you exclude penalties. So what I was shocked by was I expected the differential to go closer to zero, closer to even when you exclude penalties. But when you exclude penalties, they actually are underperforming even more. So what concerns me about that, Alex, is that they create a lot of opportunities and they're not necessarily finishing them. But what do we always say about this Villa side? When they create or when they concede opportunities, they're big chances. So I don't like the likes of those type of players, Mo Salah in particular being a primary concern, of a guy that gets a really big chance. I think he's going to finish it if he gets it. And so my concern that they're right now underperforming is that all they've got to do is get close to equilibrium and they're going to score plenty of goals. And because they already are. So they're a huge threat to me in attack. And given the issues we've got along the back line that we've had all season, but now total unfamiliarity to go along with it, like it doesn't matter that we may have the best keeper in the world back there. If he's under it the entire game, then that's going to be a concern. And I'd be lying if that wasn't front of my mind right now heading into this game this week.
And let's be honest, he hasn't played like the world's best keeper this year either. So, yeah, I completely agree. They're already leading the league by what, like 9 goals scored, and that's actually an underperformance. That's pretty crazy. They're dangerous. And so, I think the question will be, does Unai Emery sit back, soak up the pressure, and try and hit them on the break? Or does he come out and try and play the way that Villa has in a lot of these games and just try and impose their will? So, given those two debates, Chris, what lineup would you be going with if you were Unai Emery?
Yeah, so I've got Emi Martinez in goal. I'm still expecting that Cash is out based on what I had read. So I've got Garcia, Disasi, Mings, and Luka Dean across the back. John McGinn, Yuri Tielemans, again, due to injury, I wouldn't expect that even if Onana was available, he's going to come right back into the starting lineup because he's been gone so long. And then here's where I went a little different. And I don't necessarily think this is what Emery's going to do. But I went Rodgers on the right, Asensio, Rashford on the left, and then Watkins up top. But the other thing I could see is Rodgers in the center, Bailey on the right. I think this is Rashford's first start. I do. I think we'll see him out there.
I actually agree with you. So I have Garcia, Disasi, Luke is my back four. I think we'll still see McGinn and Tielemans in the midfield. On the right, I don't think Leon Bailey is going to start again coming off that injury. I think it'll be Malen again, and then hopefully see Bailey this weekend. So I'll have Malen, Rashford, and Rodgers. Or I guess it would be Malen, Rodgers, Rashford, right?
Yeah.
And then Ollie Watkins up top. And I think that will give us the pace to get in behind. I think Ramsey getting hauled off at halftime and not finishing the chances against Spurs, this is one where you hope that Rashford recovers his goal-scoring form, gets into some more dangerous areas. But if something falls, you need the players that are going to get there to finish it. So,
yep, right. 100%.
And Ramsey has proven not to be that person.
Yeah, I was just trying to shoehorn Asensio in as well. That's like I think it's unlikely that he actually puts both those guys in to start. But I was just trying to I want to see it, so I want to see how it'll work.
I think with Asensio, one, the defensive work rate would suffer. Two, I think that I haven't seen the fitness from him that at least we're hearing about from Rashford. So then the question becomes, if you're going to start him, what is he bringing from a technical perspective? And I just watched him sky 3 borderline sitters over the top of the bar. So that hasn't necessarily earned a start yet for me.
Sure,
But
it's fair.
I see what you're saying. I think once again, depending on what happens, we could see him as a fairly early sub for Daniel Malen.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I still I like everything that Malin's bringing, and I think that's an exciting lineup as well. I don't know how this is going to go, just because Liverpool are so dangerous. But what do you have for a score line?
Well, hold on. Before we get there, I
Oh,
have one question for you.
I didn't mean to
So
do.
leave the transitions to me, kid.
You're right.
With with Daniel Malen, when he came off, obviously Asensio goes to the middle and Morgan Rogers goes wide right? And when he's on the left, we have said Morgan Rogers drifts too far centrally, clogs up space. I think that's because he's right-footed, because when he's on the right, I actually do think he gave us better width than Daniel Malen did, just because that's where his foot naturally carries him. So do you think there is a world in which Unai Emery switches those positions and puts Daniel Malen in the 10 and Rogers on the right-hand side, assuming Bailey is injured? Because like we said, Malen and Ali were already taking up similar positions when he was supposed to be on the right wing anyway. So why not remove Rogers and at least create a little more space there for the two of them to operate?
I think that makes sense. I don't know if Emery does it. Like what you're describing makes perfect sense to me. I think that right now, primarily Unai Emery's focus is having Morgan Rogers play that number 10 when he's available. I know he's moved to the left on occasion and just recently on the right, like you mentioned. I would like to see Malen as number 10. I think the reason that may make Unai Emery hesitate is Malen, I think, would tend to play like a second striker, and typically Ollie Watkins has not paired well with that sort of player, whether it was John Duran, Danny Ings, you name it. And I'm not necessarily saying that we know that to be the case. I'm just anticipating, based on what we know about Daniel Malen and what we've seen so far in terms of the space he likes to occupy. So I wonder if Emery worries about the two of them kind of stepping on each other's toes.
That's fair. That's very fair. And I think the team is clearly established that we're building everything we do around Morgan Rogers, no matter how poorly he does or does not do in some of those positions. So that's fair. Probably not going to happen, but if we're playing Football Manager or FIFA, I might try it. So
right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. So now, Chris, we can go to score prediction. And why don't you give me yours?
I'll just leave all transitions to you in the future here. I won't try and do anything except respond. I have 3-1 Liverpool.
I have 2-0 Liverpool.
Yeah. So same boat. It's tough to be optimistic coming off of a game like this. And we are, if we hold true to form, there's a possibility that we come out and play really well, right? And pull out a victory, because we've sort of seen this roller coaster up and down season. But it's tough to say, we really just struggled against a 10-man relegation side at home, and we're going to come out and beat this team that's on absolute fire and tearing up the league. It doesn't track.
I mean, Chris, forget optimism coming out of this game. Let's go back to Villa over the course of the last month. 1-1 Ipswich, 2-1 Tottenham, where finishing was fairly poor against a team in the absolute gutter. 2-0 loss to Wolves, 4-2 loss to Celtic, where we were I say down, tied 2-2. 1-1 underperformance to West Ham, 1-0 underperformance loss to Monaco, 2-2 to okay Arsenal team at the time we played them. Only 1-0 over Everton, only 2-1 over West Ham in the Cup, where we kind of got lucky, only 2-1 over relegation Leicester City, 2-2 Brighton, 3-0 smashed by Newcastle. It's been a while of the team not playing well. I don't think that it's us just reacting to Ipswich and saying that it's just hard to be optimistic coming off of this one result. Again, this is what this team has been, and you play the league leaders, who, to your point, are already underperforming their expected goals. I would give us a little bit more credit when we're a little pessimistic about the result.
Yeah. Again, my big note from the preview of Liverpool, they're really good. They're really, really good.
Yep. Well, they're really good. We're really mediocre. So hopefully those two things switch on Wednesday. But otherwise, we will be back. Much like Villa, with a hectic couple weeks. I'm sure it will be for Chris and myself. Chris, you go on vacation pretty
Another
soon
one.
and escape all of this. So we'll try and record as often as we can to get out to you guys, but be patient with some of these as we try and keep up with this crazy run of fixtures over the course of the next 2 weeks. Chris, we will talk soon, and until then, up the Villa.
Up the Villa.
Hi, Mom and Dad.